Have you ever had your world shattered in a single moment? That's what happened when I heard them call my daughter a mistake. But what they didn't know was that a forgotten letter would change everything, not just for my daughter, but for everyone who thought they knew our story. Welcome to Plot Twist Life, where real stories reveal how life can change in unexpected ways. Before I share this emotional journey, make sure to subscribe for more stories that might just change how you see the world around you. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in Boston when I first noticed something was wrong. My daughter Lily, who had just turned 13, came home from school with her shoulders slumped and her eyes fixed on the ground. The bright, talkative girl who normally burst through our front door with stories about her day was nowhere to be found. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I asked, placing a mug of hot chocolate on the kitchen counter. She slid onto the bar stool, her backpack dropping to the floor with a thud. "Mom," she whispered, "am I a mistake?" The mug in my hand froze midair. My heart sank as I carefully placed it down, afraid the world might shatter around us. "What? Why would you even ask that?" I managed to say, my voice sounding far away. "Olivia's mom told her that I'm the reason Dad left. That he never wanted me, and that's why he's not around. That I was a mistake." The last word came out choked, as if she couldn't bear to form it. In that moment, my mind raced through 1,000 explanations to mend the heartbreaking in front of me, but I couldn't find the right words. For years, I had carefully crafted a narrative about Lily's father that was partial truth, partial omission, and I had to admit partially influenced by my own pain. Mark, Lily's father, hadn't exactly left because of her, but he had left when I was 7 months pregnant. He'd moved to Seattle for a job opportunity that couldn't wait. He'd said, "We were young, both 25, and unprepared for parenthood. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but a mistake." "Never, Lily," I said, reaching for her hand. "You are not a mistake. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, your father." I paused, suddenly aware that the story I was about to recite felt hollow. "It's complicated, but none of it is your fault." She didn't look convinced. Her blue eyes, Mark's eyes, searched mine for the truth. "Why does everyone think Dad left because of me? Even Grandma said something once about how things would have been different if... I closed my eyes briefly. My mother had never approved of Mark, had never hidden her relief when he left. And apparently, she hadn't hidden it from Lily either. "Your grandmother shouldn't have said that," I replied firmly. "And Olivia's mother has no idea what she's talking about. People like simple explanations for complicated situations." But I could see my words weren't enough. The damage had been done. "Can I go to my room? I have homework," Lily muttered, sliding off the stool without waiting for an answer. I watched her trudge up the stairs, her normally straight posture curved like a question mark, and felt a surge of anger at Olivia's mother, at my own mother, at Mark, but mostly at myself. Because the truth was, I had never told Lily the whole story. Out of pride and protection, I had reduced her father to a shadowy figure who wasn't ready for responsibility. I had fed the narrative that allowed others to fill in the blanks with their assumptions, and now those assumptions were crushing my daughter. That night, after Lily went to bed, I found myself in the spare bedroom closet, pulling out an old leather box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were photos, cards, and letters from my relationship with Mark, things I couldn't bear to look at but couldn't throw away. Among them was a sealed envelope with Lily's name written in Mark's distinctive handwriting. He had given it to me the day he left, asking me to give it to our child when the time was right. "When she's old enough to understand," he had said. I had nodded, taken the letter, and promptly buried it away, telling myself a single letter couldn't make up for a lifetime of absence. But now, turning the envelope over in my hands, I wondered if I had been wrong. Was 13 old enough? Would the words inside help or hurt? I had never allowed myself to open it, but I knew I couldn't keep it hidden any longer. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, I made a decision. Lily needed more than my reassurances. She needed the truth. "I have something for you," I said as she sat down, her eyes still puffy from what I suspected had been a night of crying. I placed the envelope beside her plate, What's this? It's a letter from your father. He wrote it before you were born and asked me to give it to you when you were old enough to understand. Her eyes widened, and she reached for the envelope with trembling fingers. You've had this all this time. I nodded, shame washing over me. I should have given it to you sooner. I'm sorry. Lily stared at the envelope before carefully opening it. As she unfolded the letter, I held my breath, terrified of what it might say. Dear baby, she began reading aloud, her voice small. I don't know yet if you're a boy or a girl, but I already love you more than I ever thought possible. She paused, looking up at me in confusion. I gestured for her to continue. By the time you read this, you'll probably have heard a lot of things about why I'm not in your life. You might have heard that I abandoned you, that I didn't want you, that I chose my career over my family. Some of that might even seem true from the outside. But I want you to know the real story. I grew up in a house where my father's anger filled every room. His words were weapons that left scars no one could see. I promised myself I would never be like him. But fear does strange things to people. When your mother told me she was pregnant, all I could think was, what if I turn into him? What if I hurt you the way he hurt me? I told myself I was leaving to build a better life for us, to take a job that would provide security. But the truth is, I was running from my deepest fear that I wouldn't know how to be the father you deserve. I'm writing this letter on my last night in Boston. Tomorrow I'll board a plane to Seattle, and by the time you're born, I'll be settled in my new job. Your mother is angry with me. She has every right to be, but she's also the strongest person I know. She'll give you everything I'm too broken to provide. I've set up a trust fund for your education. It's not much, but it will grow over time, and your mother knows how to access it. I've also left my contact information with her, though I don't expect her to use it. But here's what I need you to know. You are not a mistake. You are the best thing I've ever been part of. And my leaving has nothing to do with not wanting you and everything to do with not trusting myself. Maybe someday I'll find the courage to be the father you deserve. Until then, know that you are loved, even from afar. Even by someone who was too afraid to stay. The letter was signed simply your father, Mark Sullivan. Lily folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. Her face was unreadable, a mix of emotions I couldn't untangle. He wasn't ready, she finally said, echoing the explanation I'd given her for years. But this time, the words had depth, context. No, I agreed, he wasn't. But not for the reasons everyone thinks. Did he ever try to contact us? After he left, I hesitated, then decided honesty had to be complete. Yes. He called a few times in the first year. Sent birthday cards for your first and second birthdays. But I was hurt and angry. I made it difficult. Eventually, he stopped trying. Because of me, she said. But this time it wasn't loaded with self-blame. It was a simple statement of fact. She had been at the center of a complex adult situation. Not the cause, but the innocent heart of it. Because of adult fears and failings, I corrected gently, none of which were your responsibility to fix. We sat in silence for a few minutes, processing what had just changed between us. Do you know where he is now? Lily asked hesitantly. I did. Mark had reached out about 5 years ago, when his own father died. He'd wanted to know if Lily might want to attend the funeral, to meet that side of the family. I had decided she was too young, that it would be too confusing. Another decision I'd made on my own. I have an email address, I admitted. And last I heard, he was still in Seattle. Lily nodded slowly. I think I'd like to write to him. Not right away, but someday. Whenever you're ready, I promised. And I'll help, if you want me to. The next few weeks were a time of adjustment. Lily carried the letter everywhere, reading it until the paper grew soft at the folds. She asked more questions about Marquette. He was like, how we met, what made me fall in love with him. Questions I answered honestly, painting a fuller picture of the man who had helped create her. I also had difficult conversations with my mother, explaining that her comments about Mark had hurt Lily. To her credit, my mother listened, and the next time she saw Lily, she shared positive memories of Mark's kindness, his humor, his talent for drawing, which Lily had inherited. As for Olivia's mother, I called her and explained the situation, not angrily, but with the firm conviction of a mother protecting her child. She was mortified and promised to speak with her daughter about the harm gossip can cause. But the most significant change came one rainy Saturday afternoon, about a month after Lily read the letter. She came into the living room where I was folding laundry and sat beside me. "I wrote to him," she said quietly. "To Dad." I put down the shirt I was folding. "You did?" She nodded. "I used the email address you gave me. I told him about school, my art classes, and how I'm learning to play guitar. I told him I read his letter, and that I understand why he left, even though it makes me sad." "That's really brave, Lily," he wrote back. She continued, pulling her phone from her pocket. "Right away. He said he's been waiting for this email for 13 years. He said he has all these photos of me school pictures you sent to his mother that she passed on to him. He's kept them all." I felt a pang of guilt, remembering how Mark's mother had reached out when Lily was about 4, asking for photos. I had sent them, not for Mark's benefit, but because I couldn't punish an innocent grandmother. "He wants to know if we could video chat sometime," Lily went on, her voice a mix of excitement and uncertainty. "He said only if both of us are comfortable with it." I took a deep breath. This was moving faster than I had anticipated, but I reminded myself this wasn't about me. It was about Lily having the chance to know her father. "If that's what you want, then yes, it's okay," I said. "We can set something up for next weekend." Lily's face lit up with a smile that reached all the way to her eyes. Mark's eyes. "Really, you wouldn't mind?" "I want you to be happy," I said, meaning it. "And I think knowing your father, the real him, not the version other people have created, is part of that." The following Saturday, we sat together at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of us. I had spoken briefly with Mark earlier in the week, setting ground rules and making it clear that while I supported Lily's desire to know him, I wouldn't tolerate any broken promises. When the call connected and Mark's face appeared on the screen, I saw Lily catch her breath. It was like looking at an older version of herself, the same blue eyes, the same slight dimple in the left cheek, the same way of tilting their head when concentrating. "Hi, Lily," Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's so good to finally meet you." What followed was an hour of careful conversation, building bridges across 13 years of absence. Mark showed Lily his apartment in Seattle, introduced her to his dog, a golden retriever named Charlie, and listened intently as she talked about her life, her friends, her dreams of becoming an artist. I stayed for the first 15 minutes, then excused myself to give them privacy, though I remained nearby. As I listened to the murmur of their conversation, punctuated by Lily's laughter, I knew this was right, however unexpected it might be. When the call ended, Lily found me in the garden, pulling weeds with perhaps more vigor than necessary. "He wants to come visit," she said, dropping onto the grass beside me. "For my birthday next month. Would that be okay?" "That's a big step," I said cautiously. "Are you sure you're ready?" She nodded emphatically. "I want to meet him in person, and he said he has some of his art to show me. He still draws, like you said. He's actually an illustrator for children's books now." I hadn't known that. It seemed fitting somehow, that the talent Lily had inherited from him had become his profession. "If you're sure, then yes, he can visit," I agreed. "He can stay at the Brookline Hotel downtown." Lily's smile was worth every twinge of discomfort I felt at the thought of seeing Mark again. The weeks leading up to Lily's birthday were filled with nervous energy. Lily and Mark continued their video chats, gradually filling in the gaps of 13 years apart. I kept my distance, but remained supportive, helping Lily process her feelings as she got to know this man who was both stranger and father. When Mark finally arrived, I found myself standing anxiously at the airport arrivals gate, Lily practically vibrating with excitement beside me. And then he was there, walking toward us with a hesitant smile and a wrapped package under his arm. 13 years had changed him. Gray at his temples, lines around his eyes, but when he smiled at Lily, I saw the same man I had fallen in love with all those years ago. What followed was a weekend of careful navigation, of boundaries established and respected, of a father getting to know his daughter, and a daughter discovering parts of herself in a parent she had never known. Mark stayed at the hotel but spent the days with us, joining in Lily's birthday celebration and showing her techniques for bringing her art to life that I had never been able to teach her. On his last night in Boston, after Lily had gone to bed, Mark and I sat on the porch, 2 cups of coffee between us. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me this chance, for raising such an amazing person, for being stronger than I was." "She is amazing," I agreed. "And getting to know you is good for her. It's helping her understand herself better." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 13 years between us. "I'm sorry," he finally said, "for leaving the way I did, for letting fear drive me away from the 2 best things that ever happened to me." I nodded, accepting his apology without diminishing the pain it had caused. "What changed?" I asked. "What made you ready now, when you weren't ready then?" "Therapy," he said after a moment. "A lot of it. Confronting my father before he died, realizing that being afraid of becoming him was actually turning me into another version of him, someone who ran from responsibility, who hurt the people he claimed to love." I understood then the depth of the fear that had driven him away. Not fear of responsibility in the abstract, but the very specific fear of repeating patterns of harm that had been inflicted on him. "What happens now?" I asked, voicing the question that had hovered at the edges all weekend. "That depends on what you both want. I'd like to continue building a relationship with Lily, if she's open to it. Maybe she could visit me in Seattle sometimes. I could come back here for holidays." "And what will you tell people when they ask why you weren't around for 13 years? His eyes met mine, steady and clear. "I'll tell them the truth. That I was afraid of becoming my father. That I made a mistake that cost me years with my daughter. That I'm working every day to be worthy of the second chance I've been given." After he left, returning to Seattle with promises to call and plans for Lily to visit during her school break, I found myself reflecting on the strange path that had led us here, from young love to unexpected pregnancy, from abandonment to reconciliation, from a letter written in fear to a truth finally spoken aloud. Lily had been called a mistake by those who didn't know better, by those who saw only the surface of our story. But what they hadn't understood, what even I had sometimes forgotten in my anger, was that the greatest mistakes often lead to the most precious gifts. My daughter was reading in the living room when I joined her, curling up beside her on the couch. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, noticing her contemplative look. "About Dad," she said, "and you, and how weird it is that you both love me so much, but in such different ways." "Different, but both real," I said gently. "Do you think things might have been different if he'd stayed? If he hadn't been so afraid?" It was a question I had asked myself countless times over the years. "Maybe," I admitted. "But we can't change the past. We can only move forward from where we are now." Lily leaned her head against my shoulder, a gesture becoming less frequent as she grew into her teenage independence. "I'm glad he came back," she whispered. "But I'm also glad it was just you and me all this time. You're the best mom, you know that." I wrapped my arm around her, overcome with love for this wise, forgiving soul who had emerged from the broken pieces of a relationship that hadn't been strong enough to withstand fear. "And you're the best daughter," I replied, kissing the top of her head. "Never a mistake. Always, always the greatest blessing of my life." 3 months later, as Lily boarded a plane to Seattle for her first solo visit with Mark, I stood at the security checkpoint, watching her confident stride as she navigated the airport with the self-assurance of someone who knew exactly who she was and where she belonged. Gone was the girl with slumped shoulders and questioning eyes. In her place was a young woman standing tall, carrying within her the knowledge that she was wanted, loved, and precious to both of her parents, despite the complicated journey that had brought us all to this point. As she turned to wave one last time before disappearing into the security line, I saw in her smile the future unfolding with all its possibilities. And I knew that the story people would tell about us now, about the daughter who was never a mistake, about the father who found his courage, about the mother who learned to let go of anger for the sake of love, was the story that had been waiting to be told all along. Sometimes the most beautiful stories come from our most painful moments. Lily's journey from feeling unwanted to discovering her true worth reminds us that there's often more to people's stories than what others see on the surface. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to Plot Twist Life for more real stories that reveal the unexpected turns life can take. Your subscription helps us continue sharing these powerful narratives that remind us all that every life has value, every story matters, and sometimes, the most meaningful plot twists come when we least expect them. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.